Budget 2018 with Bloomberg Quint.
Very good evening. You're watching Primetime. I'm Tamanna Namdar.
And my name is Ayush Alavadi. Let's have a look at today's headlines. The economic survey forecasts a 7 to 7.5% GDP growth in FY19. The survey also does not rule out a pause in a fiscal consolidation this year.
Economic survey shows a 50% increase in indirect taxpayers due to the rollout of the GST, as the distribution of the GST tax base among states has allayed fears of revenue loss.
Indian markets resume a record run. Nifty races past the 11,000 mark as Maruti and Eicher Motors shine.
HDFC's profit surges threefold, powered by a one-time gain. Tech Mahindra's earnings beat estimates in the December quarter.
Unitech finalizes a deal to sell land worth 400 crore rupees in Chennai. The proceeds will go towards a sum of 750 crore rupees. The Supreme Court had asked the company to deposit to secure the bail for its director, Sanjay Chandra, in the home buyers case.
President Ramnath Kovind and Prime Minister Modi appeal to political parties to pass the Triple Talaq bill in Parliament. Modi calls on parties to rise above politics and deliver a New Year gift to Muslim women. And India is on track to remain the fastest growing economy in the world, according to the economic survey released by the government today. The economic survey is seen as a precursor to the budgetary announcement by Finance Minister Jaitley on the 1st of February. Ira Dugal gets us the big takeaways from the Eco Survey 2018 in this special report.
Over the years, the Chief Economic Advisor authored Economic Survey has turned out to be a rich repository of data and trends of the Indian economy, and the Economic Survey for 2017-18 presented on Monday was no exception. So you got a whole host of things in the survey, starting from the immediate growth and inflation outlook to other longer-term trends. We're focusing on 5 of those. We'll tell you what they said about growth and fiscal consolidation. We'll tell you about the early trends emerging from GST. We'll tell you about where banking reforms go from here. Some indicators pointing to a larger formalization of the Indian economy, particularly the formal workforce, and then finally challenges to the agriculture that may emerge from climate change, some of the issues we are focusing on here. The immediate concern, though, as always, was what does the economic survey say about growth and what does it say about fiscal consolidation? It was a story, as Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramaniam said, of revival and risk. The revival coming in on the growth front, where they are expecting growth to pick up to a range of 7 to 7.5% in FY19 compared to about 6.75% in the current year. That was along expected lines. But the economic survey also talked about the fact that there could be a pause in the fiscal consolidation roadmap. Remember, in the current fiscal year, you are unlikely to meet the target of 3.2%. But the fact that the economic survey talked about or justified a pause in fiscal consolidation spooked the markets, at least the bond markets, where the yield on the new 10-year benchmark note jumped up by almost 13 basis points, closing at close to 7.44%. So the immediate outcome from the economic survey was certainly not positive from a government standpoint as it heads into the budget. That was the key and important sort of immediate takeaway. Well, what are some of the longer term takeaways? One that everyone was waiting for to see was what does the survey say about GST and early trends from GST? We've got Nikunj highlighting some of those trends.
According to the economic survey tabled in the parliament, there has been a significant increase of about 50% in the number of indirect taxpayers, taking the number of unique taxpayers to about 34 lakh in the indirect tax regime. This takes the total number of registrants under the GST to about 98 lakh taxpayers, the economic survey stated. There's also been a large increase in the voluntary registrations by small taxpayers who do businesses with large enterprises so that they can avail input tax credit facility. There are about 17 lakh such registrants who have registered under the GST regime, even when they do not come under the 20 lakh threshold that is mandatory for registration in the GST regime. The survey also says that GST collections have risen by about 12%, and going by the average GST collected, a single GST rate which would preserve revenue neutrality would be somewhere between 15 to 16%. When we asked the chief economic advisor as to when does he see India moving towards a single GST rate structure, he said this would take about 3 to 5 years. However, simplification of procedures and rationalization of rates would continue going ahead. There's also another interesting figure that the economic survey states, which says states' share in the tax collected grew by about 25% in the April to November period, which was much higher than the centre's net tax collected, which grew by about 12.6% in the same period. This allays fears of major producing states, which are fearing that their revenues would be lost once GST is implemented.
All right, those are the key takeaways from GST, one of the big issues that has played out over the course of the current fiscal. The other big issue that's been playing out has been the recapitalization of banks. Remember, the government has finally announced a 2.11 lakh crore recapitalization package. The question now is, what is the reform agenda that follows from this package? The economic survey very clearly said that the 4 R's, which was recognition, which was resolution, recapitalization and reform, the first 3 of those R's have actually been initiated, but the focus should now be on the 4th R. We've got Vishwanath Nair reporting on that.
Banking reforms will have to be the key focus area for the government in the upcoming financial year. That is something that Arvind Subramanian, the chief economic advisor, has pointed out in the economic survey for the financial year 2017 and 18. Now, the Indian banking system has been struggling with a large NPA problem as well as a capital problem. Most of this has been reflecting into the balance sheets of the public sector banking system. To deal with these issues, the government has introduced the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code on the resolution front, as well as a 2.11 lakh crore recapitalization program, so that some of these banks can come back into shape and be able to lend so that the economy can grow. However, reforms will have to be the focus now going ahead, so that the weaker banks can see some of their operations being curtailed, while the stronger banks can see higher private participation.
All right, so I think the essential takeaway with that was that there should be higher private participation in financing, not necessarily privatization of banks. Let's move on to a broader trend of formalization in the Indian economy. That was highlighted not just by the data that came in on account of GST, but also some of the formal sector payroll data that the economic survey talked about. They suggested that the extent of formal payrolls is larger than what has been anticipated. Let's go across to Alex to detail that aspect.
For years now, economists in India have had to contend with a lack of comprehensive jobs data. But instead, they've had to deal with proxies that estimate the size and nature of the workforce. There's an interesting snippet in the economic survey document that seems to suggest that the formalization of the workforce in India is far more advanced than previously thought. If you were to look at formality of the workforce defined in terms of social security provided, it yields an estimate of the formal sector payroll at around 6 crore. Add to that the 1.5 crore of government workers excluding defense, and it amounts to 31% of the non-agricultural workforce. Now, here's the interesting part. When formality was defined in terms of being part of the goods and services tax net, the formal sector payroll share was found to be as much as 53%. In actual numbers, the formal employment from the tax perspective was 11.2 crore. Adding the government employment takes the total to as much as 12.7 crore.
That's the economic survey weighing in on the jobs debate, which certainly hasn't been conclusively resolved, but they are suggesting that the formal payrolls are higher than earlier anticipated. Let's move on to what the economic survey had to say about agriculture. Some long-term trends being highlighted, in fact, long-term concerns being highlighted on account of the climate change and the impact that can have on the Indian agricultural sector. We've got Purva giving us the details on what the survey had to say on that.
The economic survey table in Parliament talks about how climate change can impact agricultural income. According to the survey, extreme temperatures and rainfall could bring down the agricultural income by up to 25%. Now remember, this is when the government has already announced its intention of doubling farmers' income by 2022. The survey also talks about how this problem is more adverse in the unirrigated areas, and this could be mitigated by the spread of irrigation via drip and sprinkler technologies. However, this has to be done against the backdrop of extreme depletion of groundwater. Finally, the survey also talks about replacing the untargeted subsidies in power and fertilizers by direct income support.
Those are some of the key issues raised by the economic survey. But the quote of the day coming in from Arvind Subramaniam, both in the survey and in the press conference, and he said that anybody who uses it will have to pay him royalty. Well, the economic survey talks about a trend where India has moved from times of crony socialism to stigmatized capitalism. What does that mean? You'll have to go to BloombergQuint.com to read about that and a lot more.
Well, we'll be talking a bit more about the jobs data which came out of the economic survey, which included data from GST to talk about formal jobs or non-farm role formal jobs and how they could be 53% of that entire segment, much more than was previously expected. So it has reignited that entire jobs data, and talking about it today will be Mahesh Vyas, MD and CEO, CMIE, as well as Soumyakanti Ghosh, Chief Economist of the SBI, and importantly, the man who co-authored the payrolls data report, which has been cited by everyone, including the Prime Minister, to talk about how the jobs problem may not be as big as it is being made out to be. A special show on Primetime Debate this evening, because I'm also going to be joined by Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, to talk about the economic survey as well as what he thinks should be the focus this budget.
All right, staying with the budget session, Prime Minister Narendra Modi today made a fresh pitch for early passage of the bill to criminalize the practice of instant triple talaq. He requested political parties to pass it in the budget session. Prime Minister Modi called upon the members of both the ruling and opposition parties to not politicize important issues like triple talaq. Delivering his maiden address to the joint sitting of both houses of parliament today, President Ramnath Kovind also expressed confidence that the bill to ban instant triple talaq will soon become a law.
मैं आशा करता हूं और मैं देश के सभी राजनीतिक दलों को विनम्र आग्रह करता हूं कि इस सत्र में 3 तलाक महिलाओं के, विशेष करके मुस्लिम महिलाओं के हक की रक्षा करने वाले इस निर्णय को हम सब पारित करें और 2018 के नए वर्ष की एक उत्तम भेंट सौगात हमारी मुस्लिम महिलाओं को हम दें।
जब ओवैसी ने उठाया कि वो बेघर हो जाएंगे, ये हो जाएंगे, वो हो जाएंगे, मैंने कहा उसके लिए हम अलग से बिल ला लेंगे। और अब मैंने कई इंटरव्यूज़ में भी कहा वही हो रहा है, तो हम महिलाओं को बेसहारा नहीं छोड़ेंगे।
Triple talaq is forbidden by Supreme Court and nobody from the opposition is against that. The only bill that is being proposed carries criminal sentence and other fallouts, which is required to be negotiated. So I think if the government does not remain adamant, this can be sorted out by select committee or parliamentary standing committee or so in a week's time.
Now, Indian markets resumed their record rally as the economic survey saw growth reviving in the coming fiscal. HDFC Twins, Maruti Suzuki and TCS led that rally. Both the Sensex and Nifty clocked gains of about 0.5%. Neeraj Shah now sums up the day's market action in this report.
It wasn't really looking to be a great day of trade if you look at the broader end of the spectrum, to be honest. So while the large caps did okay, Nifty Sensex, Nifty Bank didn't do as well, and the mid cap and the small cap end of the market did come off. That's the Nifty Bank, which was just about holding out. And look at the mid caps and the small caps down about 1%. So all was not hunky-dory, to be honest, especially in the market breadth front. Let's take a look at some of the large caps first, though, and start off with what was really happening to the HDFC Twins. They held forth, and which is why the markets were doing what they were doing. Predominantly these two names, 3% higher for HDFC, 1% higher for HDFC Bank. Tech Mahindra ahead of the numbers, went up about 1% as well, and that stock will react in the session tomorrow. The numbers came out post-market hours, but it was pharma that was showing mixed trends. Sun Pharma up 1.5%, Lupin down about 4%, Dr. Reddy's was down, Glenmark was down, so a clutch of those pharma names looked slightly wobbly in the session. Select mid-cap IT gains, Emphasis up 6.5%, L&T Infotech about 4.5%. Not everything did well, but select mid-cap IT stocks did have a fairly decent outing. But momentum came off. So JP Associates, IFCI, GVK, clutch of these names were down 6, 7, 8%. And mind you, the broader end of the spectrum, even quality suffered a bit. So if you look at what, for example, Graph Finances did, it's down 7%, but from the recent highs, the stock has corrected about 19 odd %. So there's a bit of pressure that's coming up on Graph Finance as well. Last but not the least, stocks like KSB Pumps and Shakti Pumps, good results for this one. They won a large order. They did reasonably well. The volumes on Shakti Pumps, close to 2 million shares, told a story.
Well, moving on to third quarter earnings, HDFC's profit rose more than threefold to 5,670 crore rupees, surpassing analyst estimates. The record profit performance was driven by a one-time gain of 3,675 crore rupees that HDFC got from the sale of some of its stake in its life insurance arm. HDFC Vice Chairman and CEO Keki Mistry said that the company's asset quality remains stable on both affordable and normal loans.
We have not seen any material change in asset quality, whether it's an affordable loan or a normal loan. Having said that, my sense is that the various reports that you are referring to, which would be an RBI report and a Moody's report and I think a CARE report, is probably more to do with the fact that some of the smaller housing finance companies, in respect of whom this report is largely attributed, would have given a lot of loans to self-employed customers. SR Steel, we have an exposure which has been provided for. We would now carry a 50% provisioning in respect of SR Steel.
IT company Tech Mahindra's profit beat estimates in Q3. Net profit rose nearly 13%, while revenue rose 2.2%. Revenue in dollar terms also rose by 2.5%. EBIT rose 18%, while margins jumped 13%. Tech Mahindra's management has said that the focus on digital transformation is showing encouraging results.
Essentially, I think we took series of steps not only to get additional business, but also to increase profitability. That meant rationalization, that meant automation, that meant quicker and more effective work being undertaken, that meant digitization. So multiple factors were brought in to improve the profitability, and you are seeing. And frankly, as I see it, yes, profitability has increased, but it needs to be increased much further. Right. So the endeavor does not stop here, it continues.
Now, Malvinder Singh and his brother Shivinder Singh are being accused of diversion, siphoning and a digression of assets by a New York-based investor. In a lawsuit filed in the Delhi High Court, the lending arm of Religare Enterprises, which is the publicly traded financial services firm of the Singh brothers, has been accused of making 21 loans to a number of seemingly independent companies that routed at least $300 million back to privately held firms of the two brothers. Ari Alstetter sums up the developments in this report.
India's billionaire Singh brothers have been accused of siphoning money out from a lender they control in a lawsuit filed in New Delhi. The plaintiff, a New York-based private equity fund called Singular Guff & Co., has included the results of a central bank investigation of the lender's books in the documents supporting its case. The documents, which were seen by Bloomberg News, show 21 instances when over $300 million were lent out to seemingly independent companies and then rerouted back to Singh-owned companies on the very same day. The plaintiff alleges this diversion of funds was done to help the Singhs deal with their personal debt load, which stands at about $1.6 billion at the holding company level. The suit is the latest blow for the Singhs, who, as well as dealing with their own debts, which has prompted asset sales, are fighting another court battle, this one against Daiichi Sankyo Co. of Japan. Daiichi alleges fraud in the sale of the Singh's drug company to the Japanese about a decade ago, and the Japanese are looking to enforce a penalty against the Singhs of about $500 million. For their part, the Singhs deny all the allegations in both court cases that they're currently fighting.
Real estate firm Unitech has informed the Supreme Court that it has finalized land deals worth 400 crore rupees. This comes after the Apex Court ordered the company in October last year to deposit 750 crore rupees to ensure a refund to home buyers. Arpan Chaturvedi, who has been tracking that case, sums up the development.
Well, when the hearing began today, the Unitech's counsel informed the court that they have finalized a sale deal for two of the land parcels, and this particular land is situated in Chennai. And of course, the counsel said that this sale or this deal which has been finalized will fetch around 400 crores, which of course they said will be deposited in the Supreme Court as per the court's direction. Now, the Supreme Court has basically asked the Unitech group to deposit 750 crores in the ongoing litigation that concerns the home buyers case. Apart from that, of course, the Unitech owners or the MD Sanjay Chandra and Ajay Chandra continue to remain in the custody, and their bail applications are also pending. All of this now will be decided on the next date of hearing, which is 16th February. Till then, of course, we will get to know more as to whether this deal has been finally finalized and the deposit has been made in the Supreme Court.
In other news, Anil Sardana, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Tata Power, has resigned today, citing personal reasons. A company statement added that his resignation will be effective from the close of business hours on April 30th, 2018. Sardana has over 3 decades of experience in the power and infrastructure sector. He had also worked at companies like NTPC and BSES prior to joining Tata Power.
Now, Uttar Pradesh Governor Ram Naik today termed the Kasganj communal clash as a blot on the state. He has asked the government to initiate measures to ensure such incidents do not recur. Kasganj witnessed communal violence last week, where 3 shops, 2 buses and a car were torched after the death of a youth in clashes following stone pelting by a mob. The incident took place on the 26th of January. District authorities in Kasganj said the situation was returning to normal. 118 people have been arrested in connection with the violence.
सरकार की तरफ से जो निष्पक्षता से जो दोषी व्यक्ति हैं उनके खिलाफ कठोरता से कार्रवाई की होती तो फिर ये स्थिति सामने सामान्य होने में आसानी होती।
बीजेपी द्वारा प्रायोजित है, सरकार द्वारा प्रायोजित है। जिस प्रदेश की सरकार खुद ही हिंदू मुसलमान को बात करे, सरकार के लोग भाषण में मुसलमानों के खिलाफ बोले, वो सरकार से और क्या अपेक्षा की जा सकती है?
उसको तुरंत साधारण परिस्थिति में लाना चाहिए। इसके लिए अगर उत्तर प्रदेश की सरकार को कहीं कमजोरी लगती है तो वो केंद्र से मदद मांगे।
बहुत दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है कासगंज का तनाव, और उत्तर प्रदेश सरकार मुस्तैदी के साथ इसको ठीक करने पे लगी हुई है। हमें उम्मीद है कि जल्द शांति स्थापित होगी।
Well, in a major international news, in the third major assault in recent days, a pre-dawn attack on a military compound in Kabul today killed 11 soldiers and wounded 16. The attack claimed by the Islamic State group was carried out by men armed with a rocket, 2 Kalashnikovs and at least 1 suicide vest who attempted to breach an army battalion near the Marshal Fahim Military Academy. According to Daulat Waziri, spokesperson of the Afghan Ministry of Defense, 2 bombers detonated themselves and 2 were killed by the Afghan forces, while 1 was detained alive. Kingdom Holdings chairman Prince Al-Walid bin Talal has been released from the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh. This marks the end of the first phase of the anti-corruption crackdown against princes, billionaires and many politicians in Saudi Arabia. Al-Walid's kingdom gained the most since 2014 after the prince was freed. Yusuf Gamal Eldin from Bloomberg News has more in this report.
To the shares of Kingdom Holding, and as much as there are not a lot of analysts who cover the stocks, just one analyst who covers the shares, but it's obviously the shockwaves that come from that, because with the onset of the anti-corruption crackdown in the first week of November, it really shook things up, and the concern was that this was more a crackdown on political opponents more than it was a crackdown on corruption, and that overhang, I'm going to call it that, really continues to weigh on risk sentiment and on valuations in Saudi Arabia. The investors I've been speaking to, they've been saying that there's a lot more that can be unlocked if this anti-corruption probe is wound down and there's more transparency. What we do know at this point is that the chairman of Kingdom Holding will retain his position in the company. He will continue to hold on to ownership of that. But we don't have any more detail on that in terms of whether a settlement and what kind of financial settlement was reached. We also don't know exactly what the position of Prince Al-Walid is, because he, before he was released, said it was all a misunderstanding, while the government argues that those who have been released have reached settlements. Important thing, though, is that this is nearing an end. It's been weighing heavily on the shoulders of quite a few people, and for the reputation of Saudi Arabia in the year of Saudi Aramco and the MSCI Emerging Market Index, arguably a net positive.
Well, whatever goes up does eventually come down. Bitcoin's prices plummeted sharply to around $11,000 as regulatory threats and the hack of a Japanese cryptocurrency exchange, CoinCheck, on Friday hurt the sentiment in the cryptocurrency trading. The theft of nearly $500 million in digital tokens has heightened calls for stricter oversight as many governments try to regulate the booming cryptocurrency exchange industry. Well, Tamanna, that's about Bitcoins, but it's been a very eventful news day today. What's up on Primetime Debate?
Yeah, absolutely. The economic survey was the big story today, but there's one point in it which is very interesting, where the economic survey says that there may be more formal non-farm payroll jobs than is currently believed. They base it on GST data. It has reignited that entire debate about how bad the jobs crisis is. We're going to be speaking about it with Mahesh Vyas and Soumyakanti Ghosh up next on Primetime Debate. Also on the show this evening, we'll be joined by Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman of the Niti Aayog, for his view on the economic survey and on what should be the focus areas, what could be the focus areas in Budget 2018. So do stay tuned to that. We're right back.